So when it comes to buying a backpack, there are a ton of different sizes with different features to choose from depending on the different types of hiking, camping, and other outdoor activities that you plan to use it for. In this video, I'll give you my 6-month review of the Osprey Stratos 34, where I'll show you the pros and cons of using a pack like this for both day hikes and overnight backpacking trips, so that you can get a feel for whether or not it might be a good option for you. All that and more coming up right after this. Hello my people, Finerbub here. Thanks for checking out the video. For those of you who don't know, on this channel I'm all about sharing my thoughts and experiences on the best spots to check out and the best gear to bring with. So if like me, you want to spend more time outside appreciating the finer things in life, do yourself a favor and consider subscribing. Also, feel free to check out the description below for links to any of the videos or products I mention. But before you do, make sure that you stay tuned in until the end of the episode where I'll share a bonus tip on a simple yet excellent little DIY modification that I made to my own Osprey Stratos 34 that's so slick it won't even void your warranty. Alrighty my people, without further ado, let us begin. So, today we're talking about hiking backpacks, specifically the Osprey Stratos 34 and why I think it's a great option for most people. Before we jump into the review, I want to first explain why I decided to buy a new pack in the first place. I'll go over the scope of what's out there and how I narrowed it down, after which we'll cover more details about the specs of this pack, how I tested it, etc, etc. So some of you probably know, I can get pretty obsessive over my backpacks. Over the years, I've used several different models from different brands, all of which fall into one of two categories: Daypacks or overnight packs. Daypacks are typically smaller, holding about 15 to 30 liters of gear, which is generally enough space for some snacks, extra clothing layers, and a day hike's worth of water. Overnight packs tend to be a bit larger, usually holding between 35 and 60 liters worth of gear, so that in addition to clothing, food, water, and/or a way to purify and carry it, you also have space for some sort of shelter, sleep system, and cook set, among other essentials and accessories like maps, headlamps, lighters, and pocket knives, to name a few examples. You can definitely find even larger packs out there, but the only time I've ever needed a pack that can fit more than 60 liters was for this 2-week backcountry winter ski course I did back in 2012, where I needed the extra space for the super fluffy parka and parka pants that I had rented for the course. Aside from that course, before I bought this pack back in April, all of my outdoor recreation was either covered by my day pack, the Deuter Airlite 22, or my overnight pack, the Osprey Exos 58. Since I've started making these videos, I've obviously had to start carrying a camera on all of my hikes, in addition to all of my usual outdoor gear, which wasn't such a big deal back in the day when all I had to film with was my trusty old GoPro Hero 3 action cam, which, to my dismay, met its unfortunate end this past summer when the waterproof housing failed off the coast of Maui. But nowadays, since my video making kit has grown a bit larger, the extra space consumed by my camera insert put me in the market for a slightly larger pack. At first, I thought about just buying the larger 28-liter version of my 22-liter day pack, but as you'll know if you saw my Deuter Airlite 22 review from last winter, in spite of how much I liked that pack, I did have some complaints, so I figured it could be worthwhile to look into some other options. After looking into a few day packs with similar features that I could compare to the Airlite 22 for that other video, I started to take a real interest in the Osprey Stratos, especially once I realized that my dear old friend Bumba owns and absolutely loves 2 out of the 4 different backpack models in the Osprey Stratos line. The Osprey Stratos 36, which he lived out of for the entire month we spent in Thailand, in addition to the 2 subsequent months he spent backpacking around Vietnam and Cambodia, and the Osprey Stratos 50, which he used on our 3-day, 30-mile hike around the Maroon Bells in the Colorado Rockies this past summer. I briefly looked into a few seemingly comparable packs, including the Osprey Manta and a Gregory backpack that I saw at REI, but ultimately settled on the Stratos for its lean design, the Osprey warranty, and of course its inclusion of all 5 of my mandatory day pack features that I've listed in my Finding the Best Day Pack video linked below. So as I just mentioned, the Osprey Stratos line has 4 different packs that are 4 different sizes: 24 liters, 34 liters, 36 liters, and 50 liters. When you look at these 4 packs online, the first thing you'll notice is that the different versions of the Stratos are not only different in terms of size, but also in terms of specific features. So when I looked into buying one for myself, I eliminated both the 24 and the 50 pretty quickly, since my Airlite and Exos packs already have me covered for those size ranges. That left the 34 and the 36. In my mind, the size difference between these 2 packs is basically negligible. So what differentiates these packs to a point that would motivate a company like Osprey to produce 2 packs in the same line that are virtually identical? In terms of features, most backpacks designed for outdoor recreation fall into one of the following 2 categories: Panel loaders or top loaders? Panel loaders are probably the most common. They open with your typical arch zipper pockets that are often found on Daypacks and offer the quickest access to the pack's interior. Top loader designs are more prevalent on larger packs made for backpacking. They generally have a large main compartment that closes with a drawstring. This makes the size adjustable for backpackers whose loadout changes a lot when they stock up on a week's worth of food, for example. Some top loader packs are marketed with expandable sizes, like this old version of the Osprey Atmos that I borrowed from my dad for my Thailand trip. It's called the Atmos 50 Plus 10 because the pack itself was designed and sized like a 50-liter pack, but they call it the 50 Plus 10 because they made an extra large drawstring sack that expands an extra 10 liters above the top of the pack, but tucks into itself nicely when it's not in use. Above the drawstring closure, top loaders typically have a top flap or a quote-unquote pack brain, or both, that flops over the top and buckles down over the drawstring closure. Pack brains provide extra pockets for valuables and smaller items that you don't want to spend 10 minutes fishing around for in the pack's main compartment. Another benefit of both top flaps and pack brains is that they allow you to clamp something like a sweatshirt or a jacket underneath for easier access compared to the time it takes to unclip the brain, flop it over, open the drawstring, grab whatever you need, and then close it all back up again. This adds even more appeal for backpacker types who don't want to dilly-dally when adding or removing layers of clothing. The first thing that caught my eye when I started looking into these packs was that the two larger Stratos packs that Boomba owns, the 36 and the 50, are both top loaders, whereas the two smaller packs, the 24 and the 34, are both panel loaders. In my mind, as I mentioned before, the size difference between 34 and 36 liters is basically negligible, so my decision ultimately came down to this: panel loader or top loader? Nowadays, when hiking, I need quick and easy access to my video gear, and yes, I do realize that there are camera backpacks out there that are made specifically for this purpose. However, I can tell you with 99.9% certainty that there are 0.0 camera bags out there that have all the features that I personally require for my hiking and camping backpacks. Believe me, I've searched high and low for a camera pack that also checks off all the hiking boxes, and I can assure you that there are none. So until one comes out, I will continue to use the padded insert method. Nowadays, when hiking, I keep my padded insert right at the top of the main compartment of whatever pack I'm using so that I can access it quickly whenever I need to. So even though the 36-liter Stratos pack can fit a bit more stuff than the 34, I felt that the easy access granted by the panel loader's zippered pockets on the 34 better suited my needs. And even though the 34 lacks a top flap for easy access clothing storage, I knew I could make do with the compression straps on the sides or the sleeping pad straps on the bottom if I needed to, but figured that the 12 additional liters of space that this pack provides would enable me to keep those types of things inside the pack, something I could not do with my previous day pack, the Deuter Airlite 22. And so it was that last April, after all that deliberation, I went online to order the super slick black version of the Osprey Stratos 34, but after browsing around, saw that for some reason they were selling the green one for cheaper, so I called a last-minute audible and ordered the green one instead. Still looks pretty cool. When the pack first arrived, I noticed a few pros and cons right off the bat. First, I absolutely love how huge the mesh water bottle side pockets are, especially compared to the side pockets on the Airlite 22. I can easily fit a 1.5 liter guide bottle on each side without worrying if it'll fall out. This was a huge improvement from the side pockets on my Deuter Airlite 22, whose small size forced me to thread the pack's compression straps through the loops on the bottle caps to keep them from falling. I also love that the bottom of the water bottle pockets on the Stratos 34 are reinforced with heavier materials so that I don't have to worry about things like tent poles poking holes in the mesh. Second, on the bottom of the pack next to the rain cover pouch, the pack has these great removable sleeping pad straps that are a lot easier to use compared to the ones on my Exos 58 that don't have these convenient buckles. Buckles or not, this is a feature that I think all hiking packs should have. It's just a really simple way to provide a lot more versatility without adding much weight to the pack, especially if the straps are, in fact, removable. However, despite those benefits, I should mention that after testing them on my 2-day overnight hike around the Burroughs Range Trail Loop in the Catskills, where I use them to hold my tent poles, my ground sheet, and a bear bag, I'd advise that you either use these straps for a sleeping pad or softer gear items, because on that trip, my tent poles kept sliding out while I was hiking. Personally, I've never felt the need to remove these straps, but they are removable, so you can if you want to. Behind the sleeping pad straps lies the third thing that I absolutely love about this pack, namely the sleeping bag compartment. In addition to storing your sleeping bag, this pocket can be used for any number of things, but since I bought this pack mostly for day hikes, more often than not I find myself using this compartment to store extra clothing layers like my fleece and my rain shell that, for lack of interior space, I previously had to strap to the outside of my Deuter Airlite 22. The separate access from the bottom allows me to quickly grab my rain jacket without having to open the main compartment and risk exposing my camera gear to the rain. Similarly, the benefits of that separation also come in handy when the rain stops and I have to then stuff a wet raincoat back into my pack. When using the pack for regular traveling, I've also just used this pocket to keep my dirty laundry separate from the rest of my clean clothes. If you don't want to use the access point from the bottom, or if you want to store more gear in the sleeping bag compartment, you can still utilize the space by removing these two toggles on the inside of the pack, which expands the capacity of either the main compartment or the sleeping bag compartment, depending on your needs. Personally, I like the suspended separation between the sections, but it would be cool if they designed the divider like they did on my wicked old Osprey Kestrel 48, so that if you wanted to disconnect it fully, you could have one large compartment with access points from both ends. When hiking with a larger pack like my Osprey Exos 58, it's important to place the heavier items close to your body in order to reduce the effort needed to maintain your balance. So even though the weight of the pack is the same, if the heavy items are further out, away from your back, they can act like a lever, pulling the pack away from you, making the pack feel heavier than it would if the heavy items were closer to your back. With that in mind, the fourth feature I want to highlight on the Osprey Stratos 34 are the two compression straps on either side of the pack. I have mixed feelings about these. First, for its 34-liter capacity, this pack is pretty slim. So even when it's not full, it's not as though the pack is wide enough for things to bounce around inside, especially when compared to my much larger Osprey Exos 58, whose compression straps have a big impact on my ability to keep the weight close to my back. And on top of that, the Stratos' material is very robust and doesn't stretch at all, so even when I stuff this pack to the max, it's not as though the weight has very much room to redistribute itself to a point where it affects my balance. I often just leave the top straps unbuckled and dangling because A, this pack is a panel loader and extra buckles just get in my way when I'm rushing to get inside the pack, and B, as I just mentioned, the pack's materials are fairly robust, so it's not like the extra support adds much support that wasn't already there in the first place. However, compression straps often serve multiple functions. For instance, when packing for overnight hikes, I often try to save space inside my pack by separating my tent poles from the rest of the tent. In those situations, the compression straps become essential for preventing the tent poles from falling out of the side pockets. My second issue with these straps has to do with the buckles. See how they're fixed flat against the material compared to the compression strap buckles on my Deuter Airlite 22 that are more flexible because they're attached to these little loops? I think Osprey designed the buckles on the Stratos this way so that they would be easy to clip and unclip with just one hand, which is great, but this design also makes the straps much harder to use when you're trying to attach more bulky items like a puffy jacket or a fleece, and since I mostly use the Stratos as a day pack, i.e. no tent poles required, more often than not, I find myself dealing with the downside of this design. This will, however, come in handy for those of you who plan to buy this pack for both overnighters and day hikes. Personally, I think I'd appreciate the inclusion of these straps a lot more if they were integrated into some sort of stretchy shove-it pocket like the one on the Airlite 22, or if they were designed in a way that didn't interfere with my ability to access the main compartment of the pack, like the compression straps on the Osprey Exos 58, but that's a top loader. I guess I don't really know how that would work on a panel loader, but anyway, what else can I complain about? Oh yes, I almost forgot. Speaking of shove-it pockets, I need to call Osprey out on something that I think I can chalk up to a mistake, but feel free to judge for yourself. I didn't notice this before the pack arrived, but it was definitely a huge bummer when it did. If you go to osprey.com and click on the page for the Stratos 34, you'll see, if you scroll down a bit, that they have this fancy way of listing the features and specs that they want to highlight, which is great. I'm all for companies providing more info that improves the way customers understand their products. In this regard, Deuter could learn a lot from the way Osprey's site is designed, but that is besides the point. If you look at the special features listed under the Stratos 34, you will see that the second one on the list is in fact a front panel storage pocket. But to my dismay, when the pack arrived, I could find no such pocket. Assuming it was my mistake, I thought nothing of it and went about the next 6 months of my life as if nothing had happened. But once I started writing my review, I kept revisiting this page to make sure I got all the details right, which is when I noticed that it was not my mistake at all. The website does show the Stratos 34 has a front panel pocket, but if you take a closer look, you'll discover that the pack in the photo is not even the Stratos 34. If I'm not mistaken, this this is a pack brain for a top loader pack. And if it was the Stratos 34, it would have a zipper right here for this front valuables pocket. Now, I'm not mentioning this because I want anybody to lose their job or anything, but come on, Osprey, fix that shit. Now, on a more positive note, let's talk about pockets. If you watch my review of the Airlite 22, you'll know that I have a lot of issues with the way Deuter designs their valuables pockets. Not only on the Airlite 22, but also on my older Daypack that it replaced, the Deuter Race X Air. The valuables pockets on the Osprey Stratos 34 are better in every way. In my Deuter review, I mentioned that I only retired my old pack, the Race X Air, once the zipper broke off of the valuables pocket. In that video, I complained about how the vertical design of the zipper made it difficult to see what I was looking for inside the pocket, and therefore forced me to rummage around for longer. I also mentioned that the design of the zipper was the reason it broke in the first place, because every time I put my hand in there to look for something, it placed extra strain on the corners of the zipper. Anyway, later in the video, when comparing the Deuter Airlite 22 to some of the competition, I criticized Osprey for using the same stupid zipper design on the frontmost pocket of the Stratos. But boy, was I wrong. See, on the Osprey website, it does look like the same zipper design, but once the pack arrived, I discovered one key difference in the design that will actually prevent the zipper from breaking the way it did on my Deuter Race X Air. That is why, my people, we go look at things in the store before we buy them. Alternatively, you can always consult your friendly neighborhood finder bub for informative tips on the best spots to check out and the best gear to bring with. Oh, thank you very much. To be perfectly honest, even with the Velcro, this pocket is still pretty useless, mainly due to the fact that when the main compartment of the pack is full, you can't fit much more than a map in here anyway. However, it is nice to see that even though they couldn't come up with a better pocket design, at the very least, they tried to protect the zipper. If Osprey had consulted me when designing this pack, wink wink, psst, somebody please pay me to help design backpacks, I'd have argued for either a stretchy quote-unquote shove-it pocket like the ones on the Deuter Airlite 22 and the Osprey Exos packs to replace this almost useless vertical zipper pocket. Either that, or a secondary panel pocket like the one that was falsely advertised on the Osprey website. It would also be nice to see a secondary pocket that can actually be filled without reducing the available space in the main compartment, because let's be honest, when the Stratos' main compartment is full, this pocket is less of a pocket and more of a piece of fabric between a useless vertical zipper and the main compartment of the pack. Plus, the addition of either a stretchy shove-it pocket or an expandable secondary panel pocket would provide more justifiable utility for these monkey-strength compression strap buckles. Now, having said all that, the only reason that this is not a deal breaker for me is that in addition to the useless vertical zipper pocket, this pack has not one but two other valuables pockets. There's a small one right above the vertical zipper and a large one on top of the pack between the main compartment and the load lifter straps. In my review of the Airlite 22, I criticized Deuter for designing a pocket that gets in the way of my ability to access things in the main compartment. I'm still not a fan of the concept, but again, Osprey made an improvement to the design of the same concept, which eliminates some of the negatives that plagued the Deuter Airlite 22. The pocket on the Stratos 34 is not quite as deep as the one on the Airlite 22, but the wider design enabled Osprey to make a pocket that holds a lot more gear and stays out of the way when looking for things in the main compartment. The wider design also allows for a larger opening that won't self-destruct when you reach inside for something. And on top of all that, the pocket is made of mesh on the inside, so unlike the pockets on both the Deuter Airlite 22 and the Race X Air that force you to rummage around, the mesh on this pocket allows you to see where things are from inside the main compartment. Okay. Now that I've covered my initial impressions, I want to go into a bit more detail about how and where I tested the pack over the last 6 months so that I can share with you how actually using the pack has changed or disproved some of those initial thoughts. So, how and where have I used this pack? As I mentioned before, over the last 6 months, I've used this pack on a handful of day hikes in a wide range of conditions. Back in May, my brother and I spent a few days on the Hawaiian island of Maui. While we were there, we did 2 day hikes that couldn't have been more different in spite of being located on the same island. For those of you who don't know, the island of Maui is kind of shaped like a peanut. The first hike we did along the Waihi Ridge Trail was located on the northern nut of the island and definitely felt like a pretty typical rainforest experience. It was super misty and foggy, and it poured on us the whole way down. The second hike in Haleakala National Park, located on the island's southern nut, was much more deserty. It was kind of crazy. Just to get to the park's entrance, we had to drive all the way up this huge volcano that pokes out of the top of the clouds, and since we were so high up above any rain or cloud cover, at about 10,000 feet above sea level, it basically felt like we were hiking in a desert. Breathe in the free air, my friend. Perhaps your fingers would remember their strength better if they grasped your sword. No! That was actually a super weird backwards hike, because you start at the edge of the caldera on top of the mountain and you follow the trail down into the volcano, and then you turn around and hike back up to get out. Then a month after that, in June, my wife had some sort of osteopathic doctor convention to go to in New Hampshire, so while she was doing that, I went camping with Foxy and Boomba in Crawford Notch, where we hiked the Wiley Range Trail, summiting both Mount Wiley and Mount Field, and then the day after that hike, we drove up to Indian Head for a shorter hike. Dope view, no 4,000 footers though. Unfortunately, I didn't get out much in July, but on the last weekend in August, I drove up to Maine with my friend Mike, where I filmed a short day hike that we did in Acadia that you can check out here, before heading up to Baxter Park, where we spent the weekend canoeing and hiking around the Trout Brook Farm campground with Boomba and a couple of our other friends from high school. Then, in September, while my brother and I were home visiting our parents, we spent a day hiking Mount Monadnock, which, if you are unfamiliar, is, in my opinion, a strong contender for the title of Best Day Hike in New England. And for those of you who care, I've also brought this pack on a few planes as my carry-on, and I can say that, even when full, it easily fits into most overhead bins without a problem. Now, even though at 34 liters, this pack kind of sits in between the typical size ranges for day packs and overnight packs, as I said before, my intentions were to use it predominantly as a day pack. However, a couple months ago when I started writing this review, I realized that even though I had done ample testing for my own intents and purposes, to release a review on a pack that has both a sleeping bag pocket and sleeping pad straps without first testing it for an overnighter would not only damage my finer reputation for producing quality in-depth reviews, it would fray the very fabric of my relationship with you, my people. And so it was, as you may have seen in my last video, that Finer Bub and his brother Teevil packed up their backpacks and drove to Catskill Park for a 2-day overnighter on the Burroughs Range Trail Loop in the Slide Mountain Wilderness. So I actually conducted 2 tests to measure how well suited the Stratos 34 is for overnight hikes. The first, as I mentioned, was a 15-mile hike over the course of 2 days where I tried to carry everything that I would personally want to bring on a trip where I planned to make a video. And the second one was for those of you who want to know how much hiking/camping gear can fit into the pack without all the camera gear. And for that, I simply packed as much as I could into the pack to see if the pack had enough space to fit the essentials. In terms of the first test, I pretty much knew the result the moment my brother and I left the car by the trailhead. When this camera insert is taking up as much room as it does, there's absolutely no way to fit everything I needed in the Stratos 34. The only reason I was able to pull off that hike was because my brother was using my Exos 58, and I was able to fit everything in there that I couldn't fit in my Stratos. And on that hike, we also shared a tent, so we didn't have to carry as much gear as someone hiking on their own. However, just because it didn't work for me that one time doesn't mean it won't work for you. If I absolutely had to, I could reduce my camera load by only taking a GoPro and some batteries, but then you wouldn't get to see these kinds of shots with the oh-so-creamy blurred out background. I knew I had to test the pack's capacity without the camera gear, so when I got home, I emptied it completely and started at the bottom with the sleeping bag compartment. With any pack I use for overnighters, I generally like to organize things so that I can easily pull them out in the order that I'll need them. Typically that means keeping my sleeping bag at the bottom, but in this test, because the Stratos 34 has a designated pocket for that, I packed my tent at the bottom of the main compartment. After that, I placed the tent poles in one of the side water bottle pockets, securing them in place with the pack's compression straps. Then I packed my ground sheet, and using the provided straps, attached my sleeping pad to the bottom. I used the second side pouch for a water bottle, and then finally placed my cook set above the ground sheet inside the main compartment, leaving just enough space in the main compartment for some extra clothes and a couple days worth of food. Now, to be clear, the purpose of this test was merely to show you that it is possible to fit the more bulky essentials required for an overnight hike into the Stratos. This is in no way supposed to represent a list of everything you might want or need for a night spent in the woods. There are plenty of other things that you should bring on an overnighter, including but not limited to a map, a headlamp, extra batteries, a trowel, toilet paper, and a water filter. For this test, I intentionally ignored the 3 zippered pockets, the 2 hip belt pockets, and left enough room in the side pocket next to the poles for you to arrange these types of smaller gear items as you see fit. And since the Stratos 34 has specific features designated for both sleeping bags and sleeping pads, I used the Thermarest Ridge Rest Solite sleeving pad for this specific test. However, if you have an inflatable pad like this Thermarest NeoAir X-Lite, you could save more space by storing it in the sleeping bag compartment and storing your sleeping bag in a waterproof stuff sack that you then attach to the outside of the pack with the sleeping pad straps, similar to what I did on my Colorado backpacking trip, in order to accommodate the space inside my pack that had been consumed by a combination of my camera gear and the mandatory bear-proof canister that I had to buy for that trip. So before I share my final thoughts, I want to highlight a few other features that I haven't mentioned yet, and as promised, share my little bonus modification tip with you. Like the Exos, the Stratos also has a place to store trekking poles while not in use, and like the Exos and the Airlite, it also has an ice axe bungee toggle and loop that is also great for storing a mini tripod or a GoPro, for example. I personally don't own an ice axe, so if you want to learn about the only time I've ever used an ice axe, feel free to go check out my Iceland video series on the glacier hike episode. Here comes the bonus tip, people. One of the features I really liked on the Exos is the way that they manage the excess straps on the hip belt. They attach these two simple yet brilliant loops to keep the extra strap from dangling by your legs. Now, the Exos came out in 2014. I don't fully understand why Osprey couldn't include this on this pack. It seems like a pretty easy and inexpensive thing to do, but for some reason they didn't include it, so I made one for myself, and I feel that this pack is all the better for it. So take a piece of string or bank line like I used here. Paracord will work fine as well, and then just thread the string through this little loop on the strap, and then do the same thing by the loop on the buckle. Just a really good way to keep everything organized and looking nice and neat. So, who is this pack best suited for? First off, on its own merit, not compared to anything else, this is an amazing pack that is a great option for anyone looking for a larger day pack or anyone looking for a pack that can be used for both day hikes as well as for overnighters, provided that you don't plan to carry any extra non-camping related gear, like say a large camera insert, to name one example. The adjustable torso height also makes the Stratos a great option for parents with teenagers who want to get something for the kid that they won't grow out of. If you're new to hiking and backpacking and you're struggling to decide where to spend your money, as of the writing of this review in early November 2019, this pack, the Osprey Stratos 34, is the closest thing to a pack of all trades that I have ever used. Now, how does this pack compare to my other go-to hiking packs? Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's a fair comparison. Anytime anyone calls anything a jack of all trades, they often leave out the second half of that saying, which is master of none. So if you want to go on day hikes and have the option for the occasional overnighter, then yes, this pack is a great option. But only if, for whatever reason, you decide that you want to use the same pack for both applications. If a hiker looking for the best day pack asked me what to get, I'd still probably recommend the Deuter Airlite 22 over the Osprey Stratos 34. The Airlite 22 is a small pack that can fit a lot of stuff, especially with that stretchy pocket / compression strap combo. But even when the Stratos 34 is completely empty, it's still a pretty big pack that would be a pain to carry around if you didn't need the space. Similarly, if somebody asked me for my recommendation on which pack to use for overnighters or multi-day hikes, I'd still think that my Osprey Exos 58 is a better option than this version of the Osprey Stratos. But as I said before, the Stratos 34 could get the job done if it was the only pack you had. So, what are my final thoughts? When I started using the Stratos 34, I personally felt that most of the features on my Exos 58 and Airlite 22 were much more practically implemented. Switching to this pack was a tough adjustment for me at first, but over the last 6 months, I've come to admire this pack more and more. On the positive side, it did pretty well when it came to improving on the complaints I had with my Airlite 22, and for my intents and purposes, it was definitely an upgrade. The increase in size and space definitely helped me fit more stuff on the inside and improve certain features like the valuables pocket and the water bottle pockets on the sides. But not everyone carries a camera. You may just want a pack for longer day hikes or shorter overnight hikes. When you look at the features on this pack compared to a different 34-liter Osprey pack, like say the Manta for example, you'll notice that the Stratos, with its sleeping bag pocket and sleeping pad straps, is designed with camping in mind, whereas the Manta 34, that doesn't have those features, has much more features that lean towards fulfilling the needs of a day hiker. When it comes to making hiking videos, I still intend to continue using the Stratos 34 for day hikes, at least until I discover a better alternative, but for anything longer than a day hike, my Osprey Exos 58 still reigns supreme. Might this have been a different situation if the pack had been designed with a large stretchy shove-it pocket instead of this map pocket with the vertical zipper? Possibly, but we'll never know. So after all that testing, I'd say that the Osprey Stratos 34 is a great option for most people. It's a very well made pack at a reasonable price, backed by Osprey's quote-unquote almighty guarantee. But the one feature standing between the Osprey Stratos 34 and true greatness is, as I previously mentioned, a big-ass stretchy mesh pocket on the back that integrates into the compression straps. So there you have it, folks. I want to wish a very warm welcome to those of you who are new to the channel. If this is the first video of mine that you've seen, I just want to let you know that I also make travel guide videos in addition to the product reviews like this one. So if you'd like more examples of situations that these packs have had to endure, or you just want to learn about exciting new places via yours truly, I've left some links in the description below that should suit you quite nicely. Alrighty, my fellow people, that concludes this week's episode of the Finder Bub Show. If you do decide to get the Osprey Stratos 34, or if you already own one, or any of the other packs I mentioned for that matter, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. If not, I hope that you at least learned something that might help with your own search for the perfect backpack. If you do decide to go with a different option, I would still love to have you comment below, especially if you think your insight can help me disprove something that I think I already know. But before you do, I just want to once again thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you're looking for new gear, don't let the small details stress you out. Remember, life's an adventure, so relax, breathe in the outdoors, and don't forget to appreciate the finer things in life. See you out there, people. Peace.